All right, everyone, welcome to Let's Talk. And as promised, for the last 4 or 5 months, we were going to have Garuda Prabhu, a senior disciple of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, come and chat with us about the very controversial topic of the book changes, what goes on under the title of book changes. Before we begin, though, Garuda, you have such an extensive academic qualifications that really I don't even have the education to properly present your qualifications. So could you, in brief, summarize what universities you're affiliated with and what your positions, professor positions are, and what positions you hold there before we begin the topic of book changes?
Surely. Well, first, Swamiji, I'd like to thank you for inviting me here. That's generous of you, and happy to be in discussion with you about such an important topic. So, but yeah, my background, presently I hold 2 faculty positions, one at Christopher Newport University as professor of philosophy and religion and director of religion studies, and also at Graduate Theological Union in Berkeley. I'm a distinguished research and teaching fellow there. So I teach master's and doctoral students on the West Coast and teach undergraduates on the East Coast. So go between the two. But prior to that, of course, I've taught in several other places, but perhaps more importantly, I earned 2 master's degrees from Harvard University in history of religions and comparative religions, and then a Ph.D. or doctorate in comparative religions from Harvard as well. I have a 72-page curriculum vitae, which I won't read to you and bore your listeners. So I will spare you that. But suffice to say, I've published several books, and I've over 100 publications of articles, chapters of books, and so on.
Very impressive. I believe also you frequently lecture and give discourses at the Smithsonian Institute in Washington.
Yeah. For the past 11 years, the Smithsonian Institution has invited me as a guest lecturer for over 36 lectures. So it's been quite extensive. I was originally only invited to lecture there once, and I liked it so much they keep inviting me back over and over and over. So, yeah, I'm due to give a lecture in June 15th on, not published quite yet, but comparative religious beliefs, the nature of good and evil, an appropriate topic for Washington, D.C. residents.
Definitely. Let me just mention here that Srila Prabhupada is undoubtedly very pleased with what you just informed us all, because he was very much concerned, or I would say focused, that the intelligent people of the Western world, and particularly the United States, should recognize his work, his literary contributions, and so you were speaking to us not just as a professor, a person of note in scholarship and academia, but you're also speaking to us as a senior disciple of Srila Prabhupada. And so we're gonna these two things are going to be merged together in what you're saying. But it's important for the devotees to know that you're just not an academic. I don't even know if that's the right word.
That's right. Yeah.
You're not an academic, but you're a man of the heart also, and you're a lifelong disciple of Srila Prabhupada from as far back as I can remember, when you were going to school at Harvard.
Yeah. All
those wonderful years gone by. All right, so the book changes, and this is both an important topic for devotees. It's a hot topic of debate, although there isn't really much forum for debate. It seems to be a one-sided argument. Here it is. These are the books. They've been changed, like it or lump it. But outside that limited debate, there's a tremendous debate and interest going on from not just Prabhupada disciples, but from all the generations that have come out, which were in some cases into third generation devotees in many, many countries, shocked. There's interest, tremendous interest in this. So how is it, where do you step into the arena? How did you get first involved in this, let's just call it conversation about book changes? How did this first come to pass in your world?
Yeah. Well, Swamiji, it was really, frankly, quite unexpected. About a year and a half ago, I was invited to LA's Prabhupada Festival, the 29th festival in 2017.
And
I was invited, I was invited as a keynote speaker.
Amazing.
I came out and I gave the first keynote, and it was on appreciating Prabhupada's words, the nature of his discourse. And devotees seemed to be very pleased with it. It was an hour and a half long, but it then went an hour and a half longer because the moderator said, well, what if his words aren't his words? I said, well, I'm sorry, I don't even understand how that would be possible. He said, well, what if what Prabhupada originally wrote got changed? And we are not reading necessarily purely Prabhupada's words. I said, well, that would be rather alarming, now wouldn't it? And he said, well, that's what some devotees claim. Some devotees claim that Prabhupada's words have been changed by the BBT editors, past and present. And I said, well, I can't speak to that because I don't really know much about it, but I gather there's been quite a bit of background to that and controversy. And he said, yes, it's been very, very heated, controversial issue among devotees, even to the point that it could be even schismatic. So, I mean, do
you have any idea how many overall changes, big, little, small, and in between we're talking about? I've heard the figure devotees have thrown out there, 7,000 changes in Prabhupada's books, both significant and insignificant. Yeah.
Well, you see, with the Gita, just Prabhupada's Gita, there is said to be 4,964 changes. In other words, just under 5,000.
You're kidding.
No,
in an 18 chapter, 700 verse, there's how many again?
4,964.
That's around 6 changes per purport and verse, approximately.
If you broke it up, right.
Yeah.
On an average.
Wow.
Right. You're doing an average, right. So it's the way this began. I was actually there, Swamiji, when this began. I was there when Jayadvaita Swami, he was Jayadvaita Brahmachari, was speaking to me on the phone while I was at Harvard, pursuing Harvard doctoral studies.
So that's in the 80s or late?
This is late 70s. Late 70s, early as the late 70s. After Prabhupada departed, good 2 years after he departed. He called me up and he said that he's going to be editing Prabhupada's Gita. I said, well, you're just going to be correcting the mistakes, right? I mean, just a few of the spelling mistakes. He said, no, there are things that need to be changed because of error in transcription or transmission, blah, blah, blah. And I was very nervous about that. I said, wow, I'm not sure you should do that. He said, well, if you have any question about it, why don't you come down and do it with me? Go check what I'm doing. So I went to the house, which is where the brahmachari was residing at the time. And I sat there for several days with Ravindra Swarup and Jayadvaita. And I was looking at Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Bangla, commentary, which Prabhupada had used partially for his commentary. And mainly, Jayadvaita was consulting some earlier drafts, partial drafts of Prabhupada's final, what would become Prabhupada's final manuscript that he submitted to Macmillan in 72. Okay, and I actually have a copy of that contract that he signed.
That's a Macmillan contract?
Yes, yes.
Oh,
I actually have a copy of it that he signed, that Prabhupada himself signed, along with Rupanuga's. I'm going to cover Rupanuga's social security number because he wouldn't want me to. But there it is. There's Prabhupada's signature. Can you see his signature?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
This is on the contract. I have a copy of it right here.
Wow.
Okay. So I've been doing some research in this, as you can see. Now, so when I went down there with Jayadvaita and Ravindra, I was a little bit stunned by the difference between some of the earlier partial drafts and what actually got published by Macmillan, but didn't think much of it at the time and didn't think there would be that many adjustments, we can call them, okay? Nothing that would be that, shall we say, invasive, that modifying. Now, and then I dropped it. I was just happy, though, Swamiji, honestly. I was happy that some of the typos, spelling mistakes, some of those obvious errors that you don't want in any book. And Prabhupada did say, no mistakes. No mistakes. Mistakes have to be corrected. But he also said, no changes. Those 4 words, Swamiji, characterize, as best as I've been able to understand it, Prabhupada's essential instructions for editing. No mistakes, but no changes. To confirm that, in a letter to Rupanuga Prabhu back in 1970, he writes one very simple statement, Swamiji, that's so clear, okay? And you know Prabhupada, when he was clear, he was clear. Okay, so he writes, our editing is to correct grammatical and spelling errors only without interpolation of, without interpolation of style, that means his voice, his mode of discourse, and philosophy. These are powerful instructions.
Very, very, very clear.
It's right here. This is not. Yeah.
But they went beyond those instructions, and they changed that mode of presentation. And in so doing, I have seen a couple of references where, you just skewed the original meaning.
Yes.
So it's like I have also heard that there was a reason, like, well, we have to make these books more understandable for people and more acceptable for scholars.
Oh, okay. Now that's one group. Look, we're going to cover that argument. Okay. For the moment, let's put that argument aside. Let's go back to the original justifications for the changes.
Yeah. Why was this brought? Why did they start to do this in the first place?
Okay. So Jayadvaita and company, which is really only, Dravida, who's his protege, but Jayadvaita single-handedly determined that Prabhupada, in effect, was being treated unfairly by Hayagriva's editing, and therefore went back to some of Prabhupada's earlier drafts, from which Hayagriva himself made his own changes and took liberties, unquote.
Let me interject here.
Yes.
Laymen like myself would say, yeah, but the big difference is here, even if Hayagriva, whatever you want to say about what he did, Prabhupada had the final word in it, looked at it, preached from that book, and the movement rolled on for over a decade after that.
Yes.
Tremendous success.
Yes.
In other words, and
you're right.
The verse of Bhagavatam that says, even though improperly composed, because
yes.
the glorification, it is permanent.
Yes.
So
exactly.
It's actually, these are just lame duck excuses.
Yes. Yes.
On the face, I mean, I don't want to sound like Alex Jones here, but this is deviation from the constitutional position which Srila Prabhupada gave regarding his books. Don't
Indeed.
change anything.
That is exactly right.
And it's a slippery slope.
Right. It is a slippery slope because as soon as you start changing according to one theory, someone else could come along with another theory. But the fact is, Prabhupada...
And you know, as a professor of religious histories, that has been the downfall of all these Abrahamic religions, particularly Christianity. They've had some... from that professor we were speaking about earlier, that Professor Bart Ehrman, he said there are over 2,000 editions of the Bible in the Vatican.
Yeah, that's right.
2,000 different Bibles, and Martin Luther couldn't have picked the worst one to translate into German.
Yeah.
What is all that in terms of their religion and everything? What has that led to today?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, we're headed down that road, as you're suggesting, Swamiji, if we're not careful. And here, in one part of the original Macmillan contract, right here,
only
on
with the consent of the...
Only with the consent any revisions be made. And that's the meaning of authority. Authority. You cannot change an author's works without the consent of the author. Why? Because he or she, in any publishing situation, is the authority. Even it's a conventional practice that the moral rights of the author has to be respected. So each would dictate you don't change an author's work posthumously after he or she passes away. Now, in the case of Prabhupada, we have anticipated we have predictions for Prabhupada that you disciples will want to change. You have the change disease. Even if Prabhupada said nothing, Swamiji, it would have behooved us as just ethical or, beings not to touch the author's work. If you had changed, in my book, if in Dance of Divine Love, published by Princeton, if after I passed away and you, Swamiji, as a good friend of mine, said, I know what Garuda really meant to say in some of these pages, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to change them because I know really what he was thinking. You can't do that. And to do that with the spiritual, as a friend, that's one thing, but that's bad enough. But the spiritual master, to alter his words, and then to alter the Acharya's words, Swamiji, this is serious business. Very serious.
Yeah.
So
what response are you getting now? Let's fast forward to 2018. God, I didn't even know. I think I'd lived that long, but 2018. I know that you can see it on your website. We're going to put the links down below so devotees can get up to speed on your website and the correspondence that you've had with some of the no, they're not authorities, but who are posing as the authority.
Yes.
But summarize for us, or what kind of response are you getting from those responsible and those who have the gears or the control mechanism in their hand, who are pushing this forward? What kind of response are you getting from them as regards what you have to say and what others? Particularly for what you have to say.
Okay, well, you know what? I'm gonna address that, but I think it would be very edifying for me to tell you the rest of the story of how I got involved, because that's very telling, and there's a momentum that would follow that I think is important for you and your listeners to know. So, for example, this was, of course, my Prabhupada Festival talk was taped or streamed all over the place, right? And I came back from it to Virginia, and Jayadvaita Swami happened to call me, and he said he was very dissatisfied with what I said. Now, the reason he said that is because, of course, Jayadvaita Swami and I had been friends for, on and off for years and years. Him write his book. He didn't know how to write a book, so I helped him write his book. I guided him through that process. I got different drafts, and I even wrote the foreword to his book. Okay, so I come back from the talk, and he says, I didn't like what you said. Oh, by the way, I also in 2005 endorsed the new second edition without knowledge of the extremities of changes. So it was a little irresponsible of me. I was doing it as a friend. I assumed a great deal of responsible editing, but later to find out that I was wrong. So I had them withdraw that letter, and no longer up there on the BBT edit site. So what happened is he's the one who said to me, I'm dissatisfied. And I said, well, Swavas Prabhu he said he would be happy to have me come out again, send me a ticket, and do more seminars for the devotees. So I said, you know what, Swami, I'll go out there again for Rath Yatra. A couple of months later, I'll go out there and I'll even invite Dravida to come up and make a presentation. So we'll do this in the temple room together. So I did that. And then he liked that. But here's what really did it. You want to know the thing that really shifted me in a most startling and very upsetting way? After my talk with Dravida in the public eye, we then went later to Archita's living room in the BBT across the street in LA. And there was Dravida, myself on the couch, and there were about 6, 7, or 8 other devotees, one of whom was Rameshwar. Rameshwar then said, for Garuda's sake, I know that we've talked about it, but there's a place in the Chaitanya Charitamrita where you changed a statement there. Nothing was wrong with spelling, nothing was wrong with the grammar, but you changed it because you felt it didn't make philosophical sense. I said, really? I said, what was that? And he said, essentially, Dravida changed the statement, when the jiva is in the tatastha shakti, as opposed to the jiva is the tatastha shakti. And so he said, when I read, when the jiva is in the tatastha shakti, it didn't make sense. So I changed it back to be consistent with what Prabhupada says elsewhere. But I said, Dravida, if you're going to change the books according to make Prabhupada consistent, you're going to be doing this for 3 lifetimes. And second of all, you're going to make his books extremely flat because Prabhupada spoke about from different angles of vision. Don't make Prabhupada consistent. Prabhupada, the beauty of Prabhupada's thought is he wasn't consistent, and he spoke different.
Here's where the problem also sets in. It's just not the beauty of Prabhupada's thought; it's the beauty of Gaudiya-siddhanta. The siddhanta angle. It's like the angle is given. You can see Everest from Nepal. You can see Everest from Tibet. You can see Everest from China, and it looks different, but it's one singular thing. It's like the 3 phases of the absolute truth, as seen as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. You just can't say, oh, no, it's just one. No, there are 3 visions of the absolute truth. So,
right.
And there are layers, what we speak about in lecturing. There are different layers of the truth also. So he's speaking. He's covering all the layers of the truth.
Yeah, beautifully put. It's very complex. It's not a simple thing. We don't need Prabhupada. We don't need that book. Okay? And so immediately when Dravida told me what he did, I said, well, first of all, Dravida, I can tell you how Prabhupada's statements make perfect sense to me right off the bat. He challenged me and he said, how? I said, when Prabhupada says the jiva is the tatastha shakti, he's making an ontological assertion. When he says when the jiva is in the tatastha shakti, he's making an existential assertion. He looked at me with kind of a long face. He was kind of quiet, and he said, well, I never thought about that. I said, Dravida,
So we have
You never thought about that. Why are we reading Prabhupada's books through your limited intelligence?
Yeah, it's called limited overintelligence.
There's no doubt in my mind, Swamiji, that Jayadvaita and Dravida are very naturally talented and they've worked hard. Okay. But the problem with talent without training is it's erratic and you don't really have you don't have a grasp of your methodology. So what's happened here is that the editing has gone on. So this alarmed me. This woke me up. And frankly, I was distressed about this enough to say, you know what? I can't get involved with this. This is bad news. I didn't know that they were openly willing to change what Prabhupada said. That was, honestly, Swami,
Which side of the fence was Rameshwar on? He was siding with Dravida, or he was like opening this up so that you could comment about it. Where was he at in all of this?
At present, he and I have been in dialogue, and he realizes that they have gone too far. And he said he will support me in whatever way I need. But here's the thing that you need to know, the audience should know. We have several different positions in this continuum, okay? So we have the people that say Prabhupada's books should not be changed. Even the mistakes should be left alone. Just print the 72 Macmillan Gita as it is, pun intended. Don't change a thing. And they use the principle of Arsha Prayoga. That is to say that the privilege of the sages, even their mistakes are perfect. Don't change a thing. Now, my point of view on this is better to do that than to do what's going on. Yes. In my field, it would be a little embarrassing to use a book in the classroom, as I have used Prabhupada's Gita for 2 decades, more than any other person in the movement. I have used the Gita in the classroom. It's better to have, I would prefer that the mistakes be modified. Okay.
Yeah.
The blatant,
okay. And that's, you have, according to what I just heard you say a few minutes ago, you have a direct instruction that says no mistakes. No
mistakes.
Changes.
Exactly.
All in the same
no paragraph.
Yeah. So grammar, yeah, there it is.
It's right there. It's right there. No mistakes. So, but now, here's the thing. There's a difference between copy editing and content editing. The problem with Jayadvaita and Dravida is they've conflated the two. Copy editing is only for typos, little mistakes, blatant, grammatical errors. I mean, blatant. I mean, so it doesn't even make any sense. But you err on the side of caution.
Let me just hold that thought. Yeah. Just on the side, what would you say about the word sense gratification? Because I've heard that's not even a real word.
Well, it's a phrase.
Okay. Should it be hyphenated or one word?
It's a phrase. And Prabhupada had different phrases, that were unique to his discourse.
And if you take them out, you take away his uniqueness.
Well, then you're taking away Prabhupada's voice.
Exactly.
And I do not feel that anyone is privileged enough or that there's so much of a sense of exceptionalism and so much empowerment. Sorry.
Yeah, I understand.
I'm firm on this.
Yeah.
There must be respect for an author. Swamiji, you're an author too. I'm not going to come along one day and say to your disciples, look, I'm Swamiji, okay? And I got a Ph.D. from Harvard. So look, I want you to listen to me because I know Swamiji well. He's a scholarly fellow. He's always interested in history. But here are some mistakes. I know what he really would want. I'd hope your disciples would say, no, nothing doing. First of all, he's my spiritual master. Second of all, it's not even the decent thing to do. Forget about the spiritual, the disciplic principle.
What happens when you fast forward? I mean, fast forward. We're still in slow motion. It's only been 41 years since the departure of Srila Prabhupada. Let's fast forward to, say, 100 years from now. What happened?
Okay. Okay. So
what happens and what could continue to happen with setting this type of precedence that we need to change.
update. Right.
We need to update.
That's as ludicrous as someone saying we need to update the United States and change the wording from the way Thomas Jefferson wrote them down. No, we have the Constitution. It is preserved. You don't touch it. But you write all kinds of legal documents that embellish it and comment on it. Amendments can mean two things. Either that you modify what was said there because of whatever, or you explain it. So Prabhupada's books in our tradition is called Bhashya. We are a Bhashya tradition. Instead of Jai Dvaita coming and changing Prabhupada's books, all of this time, what he should have been doing is writing books to explain Prabhupada's books, not to change them. That's what we should be doing. Mm-hmm. We are a Bhashya tradition, material tradition, as you well know, Swamiji.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah. So here's the thing. There are the people that say we've got to de-Hayagrivize Prabhupada's books, especially the Gita, because Hayagriva, in effect, they're saying, they don't put it this harshly, but in effect, they're saying Hayagriva ripped off Prabhupada. Prabhupada didn't know how much Hayagriva was manipulated. So this is an indictment on Prabhupada's awareness. It's an indictment on Hayagriva's, frankly, educated, expertise that Prabhupada appreciated, obviously. And what you said earlier, Prabhupada signed off, of course, the contract 72. He signed off with a very prestigious publisher, Macmillan, and he spoke from it for 5 years. He remained here in over 250 lectures, okay? And only twice that I can count did he say in a lecture, oh, that needs to be changed. Two things, 2 times.
Can you recall, Tan, what those 2 things were at this moment?
Oh, gosh. Not right away, but they're very reasonable and simple.
Nothing that would change Krishna from being the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the Jiva from being part and parcel of Krishna and from Goloka being the highest spiritual planet and all these things. Nothing of that type of change, but some which he thought was, yes. Let me give you an example, and I don't have it exactly, but there was a book published called Ramananda Samvad in the time of Bhakti-siddhanta. And there was a mistake in that book. It was published in his time, and it was a mistake that made anybody who knew where and how Mahaprabhu met Ramananda Roy on the bank of the Godavari River would go, oh, this isn't right. And so Sridhara Maharaj, way back when, in the 30s, suggested, oh, this isn't right. This will make it look as though Guru Maharaj doesn't know the proper Chaitanya, the chronology of Chaitanya Charitamrita. It was a simple kind of mistake, but someone would say, oh, well, this man is so erudite, why did he make this type of a mistake? They never changed it, however. They never ever changed it until about 5 years ago or 10 years ago. Some Russians reprinted that book for the Gaudiya Mutt, and I'm not saying what they did was right, but what they did was they made the change without the Gaudiya Mutt finding out about it, and published the book, and the Gaudiya Mutt didn't even notice it.
Yeah. You see,
one question. How many scholars do you think read any one of Prabhupada's books on a daily basis compared to the now considering in ISKCON, out of ISKCON, branches of Gaudiya Mutt that do read Prabhupada's books, all the fractions that have developed? I'd say we just throw out a figure of 100,000 devotees a day are reading Srila Prabhupada's books in either Spanish or Portuguese or English, and that's another subject. What about all these other languages, How many scholars actually are reading Prabhupada's books on a daily basis?
Frankly, not many at all.
There are days that go by, if not even weeks, where all of the scholars of the world got together and they could say, oh, none of us opened a book of Bhaktivedanta. Prabhupada
Right.
foremost wrote those books for devotees.
Yes.
Time of the devotees and the movement, what was achieved in 12 years, and you're saying 5 years of that Gita, when that unabridged Macmillan Gita came out, that was the rocket ship ride, you know?
Yes. Yes.
That was incredible. And that produced the movement that became a household word around the
Yep.
world. Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Not
But
broken, why fix it?
yes, but Swamiji, they're arguing now that with the new Gita, we're making many more devotees.
No, they're not.
But even if that's true, of course, there are many more devotees now to make many more devotees.
If you know what it's all about, it's not, how these devotees are made and the quality of what's going on is a far cry from what it used to be.
Yeah.
There will be changes, but it's, you have the influx of Hindus. You can go to most devotees' houses and all Hindu houses who have those books behind you on the shelf there. I see the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And you pick up a volume, and when you open it, it goes.
Yeah.
They're not reading. The Hindus in mass are joining, supporting in India, all around the world, and none of them are reading these books.
Yeah, exactly.
We pass out books, but what people don't come in and say, "Oh, I read this book. I'm becoming a devotee."
You know when they're being read when you've got a ton of stickies everywhere that are so. Exactly. But here's the thing, Swamiji. Here's the thing. Prabhupada's, on the one hand, Prabhupada's books can be altered, and there's the argument just as pure. Okay, they're just as pure argument. In other words, that Prabhupada's teachings come through bright and clear even in the second heavily revised edition. My point is that it can be that there are different levels of purity. Prabhupada and Krishna have worked through this movement in spite of all the mistakes we've made. That doesn't mean we have a license to make mistakes. Now, this book here is a book that A Living Theology of Krishna Bhakti. I published this with Oxford. It is Tamal Krishna's 5 chapters with my 2 chapters. When he left suddenly, I finished his book. Now, here's an example of posthumous editing, okay? Did I change what he wrote for University of Cambridge? No. Did I edit it for mistakes and clarity? Yes. But essentially, there's nothing changed. But when I had to explain something, look what the editor did. I put a large footnote here. Mm-hmm. You see that I didn't change the content, but I explained as the editor what the reader may find helpful in appreciating the original. I didn't change the original. I used a footnote. That's what you're supposed to do if you're going to do that at all.
Mm-hmm, sure.
But instead, Jayadvaita comes in like a bulldozer, changes things that we have no idea. We can think that they're Prabhupada. Look, a very advanced Vaishnavi in the movement, and I'm not going to use her name because she didn't want me to go public with this, but she confided in me, and she's very respectable, very respected and respectable, and she adores Prabhupada's books and lives in Prabhupada's books, okay? She said, frankly, these days, Garuda, now that I know about the editing, I don't know whether I'm reading Prabhupada or Jayadvaita or Dravida. And, frankly, the only thing I can really trust and give myself fully to are his tapes. That is a sad day, Swamiji. That is a sad day.
Well, I had a similar kind of experience. It was just a couple years ago, and I was sitting in my room, and I asked one of the devotees, go ahead and read the Gita. And he pulled the Bhagavad Gita off my bookshelf, and he started reading, and I said, what are you reading? And so I'm reading Prabhupada's Gita, and I thought, oh man, I'm really behind on my reading. I don't remember it sounding like that. And then it turned out that it was the most newest edited version. And then I did a cleansing in my community, and we look at every book and we check the ones that we get the most original, at least from 72 and when Prabhupada was on the planet.
Yep.
And that's what made all of this. And I would say if you can't figure out how to do it properly, then don't do it. It's like, here's the keys to the car. Drive properly. It's a great machine. It works for you. If you can't drive it properly, you don't get the keys. Better not drive than to drive recklessly. So
exactly.
You can't do it right.
Exactly.
But the best would be do it right.
That's right. So my point is, yes, now it's a new day. Let's do it right. Let's raise the BBT to professional standards. I am definitely a different person than I was 20, 30, 40 years ago. I'm trained. I'm experienced in publishing and writing. Jayadvaita plus Dravida times 10. I am experienced to that degree compared to them. They are talented, yes. They have a lot of experience dealing directly with Prabhupada's books per se, in terms of, editing and so on, but they don't have the training that I do or the experience with the publishers of the likes of Oxford, Princeton, Yale, HarperCollins, etc. Well, they don't have that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean,
and you know what, Swamiji? Even with all my training, if BBT came to me today and said, okay, Garuda, we're replacing Jayadvaita with you. You're the sole authority now. You're the absolute authority, as Jayadvaita's been. I would reject that offer immediately and say, I will not do this without at least 5 other disciples. Because together, with all of our talents, training combined, the Oxford Bible has 57 editors, all with Ph.D s.
The actual Bible? You mean like the King James Bible, or are you referring
to... No, the Oxford NRSV.
What is that, the standard of editing or something?
No, this is the Oxford, the new Oxford Annotated Bible.
Annotated Bible, oh, okay.
Right. So this
Bible, like Lord Jesus and all that Bible stuff, you mean that Bible?
Yeah, this is the New Testament and the Hebrew Bible. Okay, they have 57 editors, PhD editors. Don't Prabhupada's books deserve at least 3? Instead, it's been one who has had wielded absolute authority as to what goes into Prabhupada's books and what does not go into Prabhupada's books, and he doesn't even have a high school diploma.
That's a good one. Hey, just let me add a little thing here. Years ago, you may remember the magazine, or maybe you weren't aware of it. It was called Clarion Call.
Oh, yes. Sure.
Okay, Clarion Call outpaced, and that's when BTG went subscription only. And on the outside, we had Clarion Call, and it outpaced. It was just way ahead in popularity and subscriptions. And ours were real subscriptions, not guilt-based subscriptions like, you should get a subscription, this is Prabhupada's heart, It was like
yes.
The world subscribing. And so we went to BBT meetings out in Las Vegas, myself, Tripurari Maharaj, and we attended with the editing staff and everything. And some questions were asked, and we asked them, well, how many magazines do you get into the BBT office every month that you read? Because they were interested in getting BTG into like the mainstream health food stores and get it on the news racks and get it out there. And I said, well, how many magazines do you review every month? How many do you subscribe to, where you can then get the pulse of what's going on out here? And in those times, they were calling it the New Age. Remember the 80s, And they said, oh, we only read Prabhupada's books. I said, well, then you can forget about having a magazine that has any influence in the world if you don't look to what the world is doing and what they're saying, what their standards are, And you want to play the game, you got to know what the game is. Now, if you just want to be totally in-house, forget it. Just read Prabhupada's books, write BTG just for devotees. But if you wanted to go out there and penetrate the thought process of the people in the world who are not devotees, then you got to know what their thought process is. You got to know what their vocabulary is. You have to speak their language even. But hey, if you don't want to do that, no problem. Or if you want to keep two magazines, one that's totally in-house and the other one that's more
isolated,
avant-garde and all that.
Right.
But that was quite telling when they said, "Oh, we don't get any magazines." Uni Reader was one. I can't remember the books that magazines. Yoga Journal, No, that's mine.
Yeah. Well, you see, it's about holding a conversation with someone. You have to listen to where they're coming from. Otherwise, how do you know how to speak to them? So Prabhupada gives a wonderful example of that in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita. He has asked his audience to say, look, just, imagine that this is true, that this is happening on the battlefield, and then judge the results just from that. Just take the story in, take the dialogue in. This is very beautifully put. He does a beautiful job. But, as I've been pursuing this, Swamiji, the reason why I got back into this after the LA talks is because many senior godbrothers of ours were begging me to lead the way, because it's been so acrimonious. Some people say that Jayadvaita is a demon from hell who came to destroy the movement through the editing, and others say Jayadvaita is a pure devotee. He can do no wrong. Obviously, he was Prabhupada's most trusted editor. So the two extremes. My point is neither extreme is acceptable. We're not here to judge the person negatively or positively. That's not for us to do. We're judging the work that has been done. I believe Jayadvaita and Dravida have done the best that they could with what they had and what they didn't have. Now it's a new day, Swamiji. We have people who are trained, educated, who can work together. And I've proposed this to the BBT board, to Jayadvaita, and they have not accepted this. Somehow they think that they are directly being empowered by Prabhupada to do this heavy revisionist stuff. So I said, okay, you don't trust me on this? Then I'm going to put together a conference. And that's what I'm going to do. A conference of academic, both Vaishnava scholars and scholars on Vaishnavism. And that is due to come out in February of 2020. But before I even get to that, I should tell you that we've made quite a few inroads. Devotees from all over the world are writing to me, thanking me for taking a level-headed scholarly position on this. And I've been working very diligently with devotees on how to look at this from different respectful angles of vision. And I think it's an opportunity for us to come together, not to fall apart. I was wondering at one point, am I supposed to be doing this? I've got 3 outstanding book contracts that are overdue, okay? I've got books with Columbia, Oxford, and Yale. I've already passed the deadlines, okay? Bhakti, okay? So why am I doing this? Why am I, so you know what happened that confirmed this? For over 3 decades, Swamiji, I have been looking for a fresh, excellent condition copy of Prabhupada's 3 volumes Bhagavatam that he brought over. You have them. Okay, yeah. Well, I had 2 volumes, one without a cover, one with a cover, and I was missing volume 1. But I wanted a fresh, complete, trilogy, so to speak, right?
Fresh.
Fresh in the...
I pieced mine together. And let me just tell you, the first volume was given to me by Prabhakar.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Prabhupada gave him that book personally.
Oh, wow.
Sorry, not the first volume, the second volume of the 3. And
okay.
And he gave that to me way back in 1970, must have been 79. And
Uh-huh.
so, yeah, I pieced together the three. I don't know.
Okay.
You
Well,
were searching for a pristine?
yeah, pristine copies, all together, came over on the ship, right? Not a facsimile, the real thing.
Yeah.
Three.
Yeah, real.
I've been searching the internet. I've been asking devotees for 3 decades. No find.
Very difficult.
So suddenly, I've been doing this thing for Prabhupada's books, trying to preserve them in terms of authenticity, accuracy, and authority. The 3 A's, triple A. Okay? Authenticity, accuracy, and authority. Okay? Now, so I've been going along, been getting all this positive feedback, and I said, I'm waiting for a sign from Prabhupada, right? Mm-hmm. So Tom Hopkins, and you know who Tom Hopkins is.
Yeah. Well, he's no acquaintance of mine, but I know his name. Big name.
Right. So I've known him for 40 years. He, one of the best scholars on the movement ever, and he wrote one of the forwards to the Lilamritam. He met Prabhupada in 26 2nd Avenue back in the day. So he's very old, 89 years old, and he called me up last summer. He said, Graham, look, I'm very old. My wife wants me to get rid of my last vestige of books. I've gotten rid of a lot of them, but she says time to get rid of pretty much all of them. 89, you got to cut back, right? Okay. He said, I can't think of anyone I'd rather give my books to than you. Would you be willing to come up, with your wife, and we'd be happy to put you up in a hotel. We'll go out to dinner. And that's what we did. We went up, we saw them, we went out to dinner. I treated. And then the next day we would go over to the house with my little SUV crossover and back it up to the house and literally pile books up to the ceiling. So my wife was in the car putting the books there, and I would do the heavy work, going into the library, bringing them out through the garage. My first shot of his library, I see.
Wow, that is pretty pristine. Only a little dog-eared on the corners.
Swamiji, this is a beautiful set.
Wow.
This, I should really be wearing gloves, really. I mean,
with a list of misspelled words in the back of each edition.
There you go, errata, right?
This is the time when every letter was a piece of lead type.
Exactly.
And I went to the press it was printed in a press called Radha Press. I saw the very machine way back in the day. I went there. That is amazing. That is a fun.
Look. And I saw these 3 volumes staring at me, and I was staring at them. I stopped in my tracks, and I said, Prabhupada, thank you for letting me know I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah.
I was looking for 3 decades, Swamiji. Only when I started being concerned about preserving Prabhupada's books, he gave me all 3 books. Pristine condition. So I have the other 2. One without a cover, the 2nd volume, the 3rd volume, and I don't have the 1st volume. But these 3 sit on my altar.
Sweet. Yeah. Sweet.
Isn't that something? It's a little surprise.
Exceptional. Amazing.
Yeah. So that's how I know.
Whoa. Let me tell you one story.
Yeah.
Unless you heard it. If you didn't hear it from me, you didn't hear it from anybody.
Okay.
So the guy's name was Sharma, and he had the Radha Press. It was across the Jamuna in now, which is very built up, but back in that day there wasn't so many things. You'd have to cross the Jamuna in Delhi and go out to where the Radha Press was. So I went there, and the day I was there, he had a guest room, and Dongre Maharaj, who was a famous Bhagavad reciter in India, was staying there, and there was this, the press.
Yeah.
Looked brand new in an immaculate room. Usually you go in the printing press, there's ink and paper all over the place. And what a mess. This thing was like in a museum, but it was functioning. And up on the wall, at the highest part of the wall, just below the ceiling, in like meter long and half meter wide sections, were Sanskrit slokas. And I'm looking around, and, at the time I was up on my Devanagari a bit, and I'm looking around. There were slokas from Ramayana, Mahabharata, all these different things, where they were from. And I'm going around, all of a sudden there's a sloka in English.
Yeah.
Trinati Suniche Na.
Yeah.
All around the room, Sanskrit, and one in English. This is from Shikshastakam. So I said to Sharmaji, I said, so, I think it was Sharma, was his name. I said, Sharmaji, all this Sanskrit, Devanagari, why this is in Sanskrit? Why this is in English? He said, because Prabhupada insisted that this sloka should be in English. And that was all the slokas, Prabhupada had added that, Very important sloka. Of all the slokas in the world, of the Vedas, of the Bhagavatam, of everything and anything, sloka was paramount.
Very interesting.
I know everybody can quote it.
Yeah.
But living it is another thing.
Yeah, right.
Amongst God brothers, it seems to be almost the most severely lacking element, so to speak.
Yes. I'm getting very self-conscious that you're looking at me while you're saying that. Very, very self-conscious, Swamiji. It applies here, but this book issue is important because it establishes a certain way of all of us gathering together under Prabhupada's, shelter. This is an opportunity for us to come together and do better. We have more facility now than we ever did before. We have more training and more maturity. Look, imagine yourself, Swamiji, 30 years ago, how much more you know now, how much wiser, how much people appreciate your wisdom. So we have that to offer now. So it's time. This is the harvest season of disciples' lives.
Yeah, well, some of the fruits are getting rotten and falling off the tree.
Yeah. Again, I'm getting self-conscious. You're looking at, I know there's no one else around, but I'm getting self-conscious, Swamiji. But seriously, we have to be careful that we harvest them in time and that they don't go rotten. Because,
what's worse is you wouldn't want to pass on rotten fruits.
Exactly. That's the point.
When you say somebody uses the words like we have to de-hyagrivise, well, in the future, somebody might say, I think we're going to have to
guys.
Right? And somebody would go, where are those original books? And go, I don't know. It's hard to find them. They've been out of print for 50 years.
Right.
Bhaktivinoda Thakura searched for way over a decade trying to find just a copy of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. He could not find a copy. So, I think we live in a little la-la land, We think, it's just going to go, No, it's not just going to go unless we go correctly. You can show up in Singapore and show your neck beads, and the guy in immigration, if he says, are you ISKCON? And you say yes, you're put on the next plane out of that country. Oh, yeah, for 20-some years, ISKCON has been banned in Singapore. They're there, but under a different name. And I've been asked, are you ISKCON? No, we're Gaudiya much. You say you're ISKCON, they'll put you in a holding tank and send you out of the country.
What did ISKCON do there?
Blasphemed demigod worship. And there's a lot of Tamil worship, Morgan, and all this stuff. In Malaysia, also, there was heavy problems because of blaspheming the Lord Shiva. It's either Brazil or Argentina, they got the boot completely, and the government burned the books.
Mahaprabhu would go to these temples.
Yes, of course. So, so to think it's all going to go on just because somebody said so, that's another thing completely, because it ain't all going on everywhere. They're already banned. The Orthodox Church in Russia stopped Ambarish Ford from building a temple in Moscow. Now, in fact, they're not even allowed the same type of Harinam, or there's some heavy restrictions. So just to think, it's just going to go on no matter what we do, that's nonsense. It has to be done right, and there are oppositions, and there are many levels of oppositions, and it's terrible when we create our own opposition.
Yep.
And
Well, just the cheating on the book distribution. I mean, just the change up. You remember all that?
Oh yeah, sure. In the beginning, it was simply on the merit. I remember being in Kansas City, of all places, in the financial district, doing Harinam in Dodis, everybody selling Nectar of Devotion, 1972 or maybe 72. And the people came out. We were tea-locked up, shaved up, pink,
Yeah.
all the whole bang shoot. And people came out, and we sold out. The book, we had like 4 cases. We sold out at lunchtime, all people suits and ties, The first reaction wasn't, get a broom and beat these people and get them out of here. The first reaction was, well, what is this?
Yeah.
So it depends on how one makes the presentation. And if
Yeah,
you make the
exactly.
wrong presentation, well,
Exactly.
people will reject it.
Well, there was one godbrother of ours that went around the movement training devotees how to do the change up.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
That wasn't
Okay. And I refused to do it, and I was removed from the temple.
Wow. I was in Africa at the time.
I said, well, I wish I was, because I was removed from the temple because I refused. I said, I was not raised this way, 1, and 2, I cannot believe that this is going to sustain our movement at all. It'll ruin our movement. And then you know what happened? I was a student at the University of Chicago. I didn't mention this, but I have a 3rd master's degree at the University of Chicago. But where Edward Dimmock, the person, the scholar who wrote the foreword to Prabhupada's original Gita. Do you know who got that removed? I'm embarrassed to say.
No.
Moi.
Got what removed? His
The foreword.
Because he didn't write it.
Well, he did write it.
Wasn't he intoxicated and the devotees wrote it and made him sign it or something?
Well, okay, I got the story from Rupanuga. He was the one who adjusted it a little bit, and he did sign off on it. He was a little tipsy at the time.
Yeah.
So I knew this story. So here I am coming in to have an independent study session with Edward Dimmock. And he says, Graham, would you sit down here? And he seemed very, very serious, smoking like a chimney. And he said, I want you to read these 3 letters and tell me what you think. So I'm reading these letters, and I'm very quickly understanding that these are letters from people who are passing through O'Hare Airport, who were accosted by devotees and cheated. Mm. And they were so furious that they wrote to Edward Dimmock and say, how in the world can you endorse a book whose readers and followers promote, the book through cheating? And so he's like, so I'm pretending to have a hard time reading it because I'm trying to think, how in the world am I going to respond to this? So I stopped reading all 3 letters after I read them, and I said, Professor Dimmock, I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry. I mean, I'm not really in charge of what devotees do. I don't have any position in the movement. He said, Graham, what I never wrote this forward.
Yeah,
I said,
that's what I mean.
I said, you never must have signed off on it. He didn't know that I knew that he was drunk. I said, you must have signed off on it because the BBT doesn't publish anything that isn't, signed off on legally. He said, okay, yeah. So I wrote it, but I don't want it in there. So he admitted to writing it. So, because I knew the story from Rupanuga, thank goodness. Mm. So I knew he signed off on it because Rupanuga got his signature. So he said he doesn't want it in there because of this kind of, and I said, you know what? I will call the head of the BBT and I will ask him to remove it. Mm-hmm. Even though I knew Prabhupada loved it. Mm-hmm. He writes about it. Mm-hmm. Prabhupada wrote about it. Mm-hmm. Spoke about the forward. Mm-hmm. So I regret, removing it. I think it should be put back in or at least put somewhere. But the thing is that I convinced Rameshwar to take it out because I first tried to convince him to take it out because Dimmock was getting all this bad stuff. That didn't do it. And then I said, but think about this, Rameshwar. Since when does the Bible need someone's forward? The Bible doesn't need a foreword by anybody. The Gita is the third most read sacred text in the world. Why does it need a foreword by some mundane scholar? It doesn't need it. And that did it. He took it out. So for better or for worse, I'm the one who catalyzed that. And I have regrets because I think it should be in there. Of course, Ed Demunk is now long past. You can put it back in there. No one will be disturbed. But the point is that
he won't get any fan mail.
No. So anyway, these things, the movement has gone through different stages and has had various disasters along the way. I just am trying to see that this doesn't become really maybe one of the most colossal, damaging disasters of its history.
Exactly. A lot of us feel, just as the disciples, that this severely jeopardizes and puts the legacy of Prabhupada in question as regards longevity.
Yeah.
I gave the example just this morning. I said if I was a student, I was going to do a Ph.D. on Shakespeare. Would I go down to the library and get a 21st century published in, good old American English edition from 2016 and write my thesis on Shakespeare, or would I go to the Oxford Library and dig me out a 15th century or whatever century Shakespeare was and try to get ye old English version of the ye old original Shakespeare?
Right.
And it's obvious that you would go to the original so that you could really delve into Shakespeare.
Yeah.
And that your work might be more complicated because you'd have to do research on the particular word usages and such at the time. But I just couldn't imagine any serious student turning to a modern English version of Shakespeare in any level of serious study. So it seems like the changed books become useless for those scholars and the halls of Oxford and Harvard and divinity students around the world. They're null and void.
Inauthentic. Yeah. So, like I said, the 3 A's: authenticity, accuracy, and authority. That is what I'm seeking through a group effort in the BBT. That editing now should be a collective effort of very dedicated, trained, and talented devotees working together and to evolve a chaste approach to editing based on Prabhupada's direct instructions. That's all I'm asking for, Swamiji.
Okay.
It's reasonable.
What do you have? What are the high hopes for achieving through the conference, or what is it? It's being called a symposium, or what?
Symposium. That's right.
So what would be your product out of that in the way of some whatever? What is the product of that, and what would you then? Where would you deliver that? And what would you hope that would achieve?
Yeah. Well, I'm disappointed that my own godbrothers and godsisters, with all the years of training and experience that I've had, don't even seem to acknowledge the veracity of my opinions and statements about how editing should be done based on Prabhupada's instructions. It's not the Garuda show. It's Prabhupada's show. It's Prabhupada's books. I wouldn't want my books changed after I die. Mm-hmm. And frankly, nor would Jayadvaita. Mm-hmm. But Jayadvaita has wielded absolute power in the BBT. I asked him. So I said, the book that I helped you with, Vanity Karma, I said, the one for which I wrote the foreword. I said, so what did you do to get it published by the BBT? Did you just kind of walk into the BBT office one day, slap the book down and say, publish it? And he said, yeah. I said, wow. Wow. I said, do you know what they put me through to get a book published by Princeton and Oxford? Usually it's a year process. They send it out to 3 anonymous scholars who review the heck out of it. They tear it apart. They write a report. I have to respond to the report. Then Oxford responds back to me. And then I have to argue for it. And then they put it forward to their editorial board, their in-house editorial board at Oxford. And then it comes back to me. By the time this process is done, it's a year.
Well, see, BBT is just an extended thing called self-publishing.
That's what it should be.
You have some friends edit it, and you go to publish a book, and then you have tea parties and tequila parties, and you pass out your books to your friends. That's called self-publishing. When you go through the rigors are much, much higher. So actually, BBT is just a glorified self-publishing entity because it answers to no one and decides which standards it wants, like, capitalizing his, hers in relation to Krishna and Radha and doing all this kind of stuff. And it's all great for in-house, for those classes and Bhagavatam classes and devotees and the bhaktas and Yahoo, that all works. Yeah. But then when you want to put it on a bookshelf, I mean, in a bookstore or in today's world, on an e-book, on an e-reader, on a Kindle or any of that stuff, or a PDF, it should be a whole different. It's a different ballgame,
It is, and I'm trying to raise the BBT consciousness to a more professional, more ethical, more devotionally grounded publisher. So since, unfortunately, the BBT doesn't really trust me with all my training, I've been very dedicated to Prabhupada all these years. You know that, Swamiji. You've known me for decades. I mean, I haven't gone anywhere. And yet they will not trust me on this. So you know what I said? Okay, you don't trust me? Fine. I'm going to invite 16 scholars from around the world, and maybe you'll listen to them. And you know what? After the conference, I will publish the proceedings in a fine publisher. And it's all about Prabhupada's books and posthumous editing. Then you will see. So I have no institutional power, Swamiji, but I do have power of seniority in the academic arena.
As Confucius used to say, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
That's right.
So still,
I can't even lead them to the water. That's how effective I am.
Well, but what's going to happen. You know what's going to happen, and it's already happening. Then the original books of Srila Prabhupada, going back to 1972, with the grammatical mistakes and everything, are going to be published come hell or high water.
That's right.
And that's already going on. There was a court case. I don't have the details really on it, but I know that there was a case. Books were seized.
Yeah, that's right.
Were seized in India, and a spokesman for the BBT, what's called the BBT, which is not even the BBT, it's called the BBTI. That's a whole other thing. How did we get there? What happened to the BBT anyway?
Right.
And that's a whole thing the devotees don't understand.
Well, they turned to trust. The trust that Prabhupada created legally. It's a legal trust. They turned it into a corporation, which is the BBTI, and a devotee lawyer in Berkeley area or San Jose area by the name of Gaurava Das declared that possible because they made they made Prabhupada author for hire. So the BBT is no longer belonging to Prabhupada, but rather Prabhupada belongs to the BBTI, and the BBT board gets to choose what the BBT is. And so now what you've got is a bunch of feudal lords over different parts of the BBT world doing whatever they want. And paying people full time. And investing money in questionable ways.
Well, make no mistake about it, the original books of Prabhupada will be printed on the, what do they call it, on the pain of death almost, on the pain of of going to jail. There are presses all over the world. People have money, and already devotees are just saying, well, you know what? Basically, as Confucius said, the hell with you, and we're going to print Prabhupada's books, and we're going to make them available black market. Now, it's a shame, but in the end, 100 years down the road, it might be those black market books that scholars as well as devotees pursue in order to understand what was this great personality who affected this amazing movement in the modern world and the Hare Krishna world and all of this stuff. You know, so it would be nice to do it in the civilized way, so to speak, cooperating, doing it as you're describing it. But if it fails, it's going to be done anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And it's being done. I mean, the book I just showed you is actually a book published by an independent publisher who has the licensed rights from the BBTI to do so. They actually won the court case to publish.
Is that called the Krishna Culture or the Krishna something?
Krishna Book, KBI, Krishna Books Incorporated.
Yes.
KBI. They are legally licensed from the BBT, and only because legally they won the case.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. But the thing is this, Swamiji, I'm not very qualified.
What did Prabhupada say about another thing? You know, people are all so ready to criticize Gaudiya Math. Yeah, let's get on the Gaudiya Math. What was their biggest fault? And Prabhupada told us, amongst a couple of other things, not following certain instructions, they fought in the court.
That's it.
And he said
it's happening.
The name Asar. Asar means useless.
You're right.
Fought for the rights. Yeah, we can get into that. There's some things that I've dug out of the history about Brahma Samhita and who wrote it and who changed it and what Prabhupada said about it. And actually, he mentions that the Brahma Samhita after Bhaktisiddhanta was changed.
Oh.
Yeah, so I went and got an original 1930, I think it's 1933 edition, and the later edition by Gaudiya Math. And I went verse by verse, word by word in the Brahma Samhita, and there was no change at all. I figured out what Prabhupada was talking about until I compared the foreword by Bhaktisiddhanta, and there was a major whole paragraph missing, only one thing. And that paragraph gave credit to who translated this book. And it wasn't Bhaktisiddhanta. And that book, Brahma Samhita, is a translation of Bhaktivinoda's commentary in Bengali. They translated Bhaktivinoda's commentary into English, and they put their Guru Maharaj's name on the cover. Bhaktisiddhanta never wrote one word of the Brahma Samhita, either verse or purport. He wrote the introduction, actually the foreword. And in the end, he gives credit to those who did the actual translation work. And because of court cases at the time, the Gaudiya Math, who wanted to dominate the copyright for that book, took out the names of the people who actually did the translation work. And Prabhupada, just on that, said they have changed it. He did not approve of that. He didn't say what the change was, but there it is.
Right.
And
interesting.
Still today, devotees go, yeah, Bhaktisiddhanta's words are so high in the Brahma Samhita. It's like, guess what? That's Dr. Sanyal and Prabhu Tirtha, who was a disciple of Bhaktivinoda.
Yeah. Very interesting. Very interesting. But Swamiji, I have to say to you and to the listeners that I'm not an authority at all on the legal issues. And even my impressions are, iffy. But in terms of the actual content and copy editing policies and techniques and the way it should be done, I do claim myself to be an authority. And that I'm probably more experienced than any devotee disciple that Prabhupada's ever had in that regard.
And I think along with that, and I think we should all recognize you for that. And there's also a moral issue here, also, that every disciple, trained or untrained in academia or editing or anything, a moral issue.
Yes.
We're talking about our Sadguru, our eternal spiritual master, his legacy into this world to point souls in the direction of back to home, back to Godhead. And to tamper with that is to interfere with divinity on a level that you don't want the reaction to that.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
The bad reaction.
And frankly, aside from being afraid of the reaction, frankly, it's not a loving thing to do.
Absolutely not. Just like those
Swami,
three books that you have right there. That is so sweet. Sometimes I give class just from there and say, if you want to know who Prabhupada was before he got BBTized in America with Banker's English, read this. Read this. This is just mukkan. This is just sweet. This is the soul of bhakti. This is the urgency of Krishna consciousness to the world. And you can just cruise through all the misspelled words and all the improper sentence structure, and you can get out of it inspired for Krishna consciousness like no other books possible.
Yeah. No, it's about being really lovingly loyal to Prabhupada and preserving the gifts he came to give us. It's just that simple. And as soon as you think you know better what Prabhupada desired than even Prabhupada himself knew, it's an indictment on Prabhupada's lack of awareness.
Here's something devotees understand, but Prabhupada didn't do the translations of the verses of Chaitanya Charitamrita. Those were done by Jai Sachi, and I forget who else worked with him on that. And there are some glaring mistakes in the verse translations. One of the most glaring is, it says that Mahaprabhu gave a Govardhan Shila and a Gunjamala to Raghunath Das Goswami to worship. It says Gunjamala, garland of conch shells. So in Jagannath Puri, you have those little teeny conch shells, and they sell.
Right.
So at the time of translating, Jai Sachi, and I think it was Nitai, I'm not sure, but Jai Sachi for sure is doing the Bengali, and they're going, Gunjamala, what is Gunjamala? And somebody goes, oh, I think that's a garland of conch shells, you see. And so the original one says, Mahaprabhu gave a Govardhan Shila, and this Gunjamala, garland of conch shells. Well, there's a big problem there, but it's because a Gunjamala is actually a red and white and black bead that grows in the brudge and is considered to be the representation of Radharani. So he gave Gunjamala and Govardhan. He gave the worship of Radha Giridhari. Not conch shells. Those conch shells don't represent nothing. And so late in this new edition, somebody told me just the other day, it says in the word for word, it says Gunjamala, such and such beads or conch shells. It's like, what? Now it used to be just conch shells. Now it's Gunjamala is a bead, an organic little bead, but it's very spiritually significant because the worship of Govardhan is incomplete without Gunjamala. It is the representation of Srimati Radharani. And this worship of Govardhan is introduced by Mahaprabhu when he gives the Govardhan Shila to Raghunath Das Goswami.
Oh, very interesting.
A little thing, conch shell, a little bead. What's missing is, what is the spiritual meaning of that? Mala. It is the representation of Radharani. So Govardhan is always, in our Sampradaya, is always worshipped with the Gunjamala. Now, Gunjamala in Krishna Lila, Radharani and the gopis make extensive jewelry from Gunjamala, and they give to Krishna. Now, amazing thing, this Gunjamala bead is deadly poison.
Oh, is that right?
There is actually an international ban when the Catholics in India started making rosaries and different things from these Gunjamalas. Just to pass the needle through the soft bead, if you prick yourself, that is enough to kill you. Within 3 days, it arrests the respiratory system. It's listed in many books of extremely poisonous plants. And I think that it's very interesting. It is the representation of Radharani, but improperly dealt with, it can kill you.
Yeah, interesting.
So read a little theology into that.
Sure.
The highest entity of devotion to improperly deal with her in any way can lead to our spiritual death And if you mess around with these beads in the wrong way, it can actually physically kill you.
Wow.
And
Wonderful.
Vrindavan, there's one shop in Vrindavan that sells them, and the man will tell you, these are poison, deadly poison.
Hmm.
And one day I had a broken mala, and it was on a Sunday feast day that day, and I thought, well, I'll just throw these beads into the fruit salad. And they were hard. By that time, they were hard, and I thought, now they'll crack somebody's teeth, so I threw them out under some bushes. And then I got a book on poisonous plants of Hawaii, and it was listed there, and I was like, oh my God.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Wiped out the whole community.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Oh, but there it is. It says garland of conch shells. It's not conch shells. There's a meaning to those beads. It's deep spiritual, Gaudiya spirituality. You see.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there were mistakes, and
yeah.
Everybody said, well, how could Prabhupada make that mistake? Because he didn't translate the verses. Jai Sachi did. He looked at the Bengali, then he reads the Bengali of Bhaktivinoda and Bhakti-siddhanta in the purports and gives a summary purport. And people don't even understand, look, Prabhupada is saying, take the Burdwan line, go out to such and such station, get off the train, get on the Tonga, go 3 kilometers to such and such village. There you'll find the temple, and there you'll find the descendants of such and such associate of Mahaprabhu.
Right.
He didn't know. That's Bhakti-siddhanta, who did a tour way back in like 1918 and went to all these places, and he's just translating Bhakti-siddhanta's commentary there.
Instructions, right.
And he's not changing anything. You know?
Right.
I think, it's important, when you get around to that, finally people surrender and are willing to work harmoniously. I have some information, from where a lot of this information comes from.
Yeah, marvelous.
Which is noteworthy. And when you start changing what Prabhupada says, now you're actually changing what Bhakti-siddhanta said, or what Bhaktivinoda has said. Because he's relating their two commentaries, summarizing them, I say, and that's what that's what Prabhupada says. You changed that, now you've changed what 2 previous acharyas have changed.
Right. So you see, Swamiji, what you just said about the Gunja Mala is the argument that Jayadvaita uses. The editors that Prabhupada was using were incompetent. So I'm changing it back, he says, to what Prabhupada really meant. Here's my point, that Prabhupada accepted the CC the way it was published. The way to take care of this is an editor's note, like you said, noteworthy.
Exactly.
You put a note saying that this is most likely the Gunja berry because of blah, 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 blah. And, courtesy of Narasingha Maharaj. You could actually give your source of an experienced devotee who said this and claims it.
Well, what you do is you go to the original Bengali and read the commentaries of Bhaktivinoda and Bhakti-siddhanta in Bengali, and it's clear as sunrise.
There it is. But you see, there's something about respect.
People don't want to go to the previous acharyas. When there is a misunderstanding of anything our Guru says amongst us, Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, you go to you go to the Shastra, or you go to, if you can recognize a higher living authority, this is Guru, Sadhu, Shastra. Because we will disagree on what our Guru has said. And some things can be resolved by going to the previous authorities.
That's right. Yeah.
Do that.
And it has to,
one person.
Right.
Be the job of 1 or 2 people. This is ridiculous.
No, it's a Prabhupada's books deserve better. And if it's done with intelligent devotees, they will know to do what you're saying. And then they'll know how to notate it in the book in a respectful way. It can be done professionally, Swamiji. There's no reason to do this in a slipshod, disrespectful, tampering fashion. No reason to do that.
Or on the black market if necessary.
Yeah. That's all I'm saying, is to bring it up to professional, ethical, and devotional standards. That's all I represent.
All right. Well, that's very notable. I think we've run an hour and a half here. I think that's a lot for our listeners to digest. let's get this one out there, and out there means get it uploaded and send it
Sure.
around. I have 1,600 devotees on my mailing list for articles and such things. So we'll send out a particular notice on this one, and as well as our in-house community. And
wonderful.
Well, a lot of times you can't really judge by how much feedback you get. I mean, I myself watch a lot of things, and I don't comment. I don't like or dislike. I just, okay, thank you very much for that every once in a while. But I think this is going to be well appreciated. I know people in Vrindavan who have been asking for this. And the day I told them, yeah, Garuda Prabhu has agreed to come online with me and discuss, and they keep saying, when? So
yeah.
Here we are. And
well, Swamiji, if there is some feedback and more question, and they want me to get into any kind of detail, not about the legal stuff. That's not my authority. I have impression, but about the scholarly way to do editing and publishing. I will be happy to take that as far as anyone wants me to. And of course, I'll give you the various links to the conference. We're raising money on a GoFundMe page for the conference. We've already raised about $10,000 and to bring scholars in from around the world and for research and Prabhupada's instructions. So we're excited about what's happening. There's a lot of good stuff that's happening, actually. The momentum is building up. A lot of people who are just on the wall or even assuming the authority of Jayadvaita have radically changed and said, you know what? It is time for a raising of the bar at the people.
Absolutely.
It's been a remarkable thing. It's going in that direction. In fact, I can leave you with one last fact. There is a GBC subgroup called the Sabha. It's a recently formed group that consists of about 32 devotees from around the world who are very dedicated temple presidents, major players around the movement, and covering the general devotee demographics, right? They come together, they review different things, and then they make recommendations, they vote on things and make recommendations to the GBC, and it goes to the top of their list. So they invited Dravida as a special guest on this, on this email thread, and they invited me, and we debated back and forth. Well, debated, discussed, and so on. Out of the 26 people that voted, amazingly, 5 voted for doing things the way Jayadvaita and Dravida have been doing, and 21 voted for reassessing the whole thing the way Garuda has been speaking.
Bravo.
That is remarkable.
Definitely.
Swami came on thinking, look, it's been going on fine. If it ain't broke, why fix it? They didn't know that anything was broken. So 21 to 5. Very significant, Swamiji.
Good.
This is the direction in which things are moving.
Well, that's a good sign. That's a good sign.
Yeah. I just wanted to let you know.
All right. So let's wrap it. We'll wrap it. We'll call it a wrap right now.
Okay.
I'll get the links from you from everything after we sign off here. And,
Great.
And we'll put those in the comments and in the information below our video, and we'll send that out. And thank you very, very much. And I'm sure what you've said needs to be listened to more than once by inquisitive persons to really grasp the seriousness of this whole area of controversy. Yeah. And thank you very much, Garuda.
Well, Swamiji, I offer you my dandavats of appreciations, and also to all listeners, my dandavats. So I thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Prabhupada.